Greetings brothers, welcome to this week's tactics video. Today we're going to tell you how to get the most out of your fight phase as a player of Warhammer 40k. This is a Blood Angels focused video, but some of these rules are going to apply to everyone. I am going to tell you how you can do nifty things in the fight phase, such as making the most of your pile-ins, attacking units that you didn't charge, killing units inside transports, and at the very end I've got one where you can actually fight first against an enemy unit that has fight first. So that's a very interesting situation as well. If you stay to the end of this video, you will definitely level up your fight phase. So let's get into 6 different tips and examples on how to be a better Warhammer 40,000 player. So thanks for being here, and let's get into our first tip. First tip is going to be about rapid ingress and charging and how you can use this to your advantage. So I want to show an example of something that I did recently that I should have done better with. So here are my 10 Death Company Lamartas coming in from rapid ingress just around 11 inches away from this guy. This guy's a very big base. He would have had to go round to make the charge, so it wasn't possible for him to do that. So there's a dreadnought here, and just behind this piece of terrain over here, with I think like his big gun was just sticking out the edge, something like that, was a Castellan knight. And this Castellan knight was causing me huge problems. So I had to kill the Castellan, so this was the only place I could come in obscuring and have a reasonably easy charge. If I move 12 inches to here, I should be able to get the charge on a roll of like a 4 or a 5. Now, having rapid ingress these guys, it means in my turn I am available to move. So I decided to make my 12-inch jump forward through this obscuring piece of ruin, and I wanted to get as many of my Death Company within 3 inches of this guy as possible to light him up with infernal pistols. In reality, what I actually got was 2 rows of Death Company, so it was like 6 models within 3 inches. So I'm going to get 6 infernal pistols in melter range. I then am going to have 3 more infernal pistols, or 4 more outside of melter range. And Lamarta's is a bolt pistol, I don't really care about that. I could have thrown grenades at this guy. That would have possibly been a good point, but I think I was low in CP at this point. So we measure here, we've got those infernal pistols. Perfect. So I shot all the infernal pistols at this dreadnought. Obviously dreadnoughts have a 4-up invuln save. I leave this knight on 5 wounds. So this was a dreadnought. Over here behind the terrain was the Castellan. Ideally I would have liked to shot the Castellan, but there was no place I could bring the Death Company down, that they would be obscured and survive to be able to make the charge on the Castellan. So now I have an interesting choice. I have to roll my charge, and basically what I want to do is charge the Castellan. But ideally, I want to kill this as well, right? Like, I can't leave a dreadnought with 5 wounds right next to my Death Company. It could even heroically intervene. If it doesn't heroically intervene, it's strength 10 minus 2 psi cannon. It's going to pick up a bunch of Death Company, and then it's going to charge me. It's going to pick up a bunch more of Death Company. It's something that I can't do. So I have to kill this. I'd hoped to kill it with infernal pistols. I hadn't, but I have to make the charge on this. Okay, and so here is the mistake. I roll my charge. I declare both of them as the charge target, and I roll a 5. What a 5 will do is, yes, it will let me engage with this guy, but it'll only get me like 1 or 2 guys over the wall. So assuming that I have to put 1 or 2 over the wall, like this, within engagement range, because the charge rules now say, when you targets of the charge need to be 12, don't need to be visible. If the distance roll is insufficient, the charge fails, but the charge is successful. Each model makes a charge move less than or equal to the charge roll and must move into base-to-base contact with the enemy. So this is a huge problem for me, because with this 5, a bunch of these guys can get into base-to-base contact with this guy. Honestly, 1 Death Company could probably have finished this guy off, maybe 2. I need more on this 24 wound Castellan knight over here with toughness 13, which was the one behind the wall. That's where I want most of my attacks going. And by declaring both, this was a huge mistake. I rerolled the charge, because Death Company are allowed to reroll a charge, and I got a 6. So it doesn't really help me any more shape or form. I think I got 1 more guy over the wall, something like this. So in the end, once I was able to do my pile-in, I think I got like 3 or 4 attacking the knight, and obviously we kill the dreadnought, but the knight still survived for 1 more round of shooting, and obviously it's going to shoot a bunch of its out of combat shooting as well. It was really, really bad. So this was a horrific mistake by me declaring both targets. What I should have done, and I guess what I could have done, is I should have just declared this knight behind the wall as the target, because remember in 10th edition when you get to the pile-in phase, the rules for pile-in says every model must move up to 3 inches, every model that moves must end closer to the closest enemy model and in base contact with that enemy model if possible. The unit must end in unit coherency and with engagement range of at least 1 enemy models, otherwise it can't pile in. So with my 6-inch move originally, what I should have done is put a couple of more guys hard against this wall. What I ended up having to do was I had to bring the guys like this, and I had to do something like this where a bunch of these guys ended up in coherency. It was complete overkill on this knight, and I had to like daisy chain out some in the middle so they couldn't fight. So I ended up with like this. So they absolutely overkilled this dread knight, and we didn't do enough damage to this knight. When we piled in, we got a couple more over, but it didn't really help us. If I had not declared this as my charge target, what I could have done, if we go back to like this situation where none of them have gone against this guy, I could have made my 6-inch move. We agreed only 3 can get over the wall, but I could have put a couple, maybe even 3, very, very tight close to the wall. You can see there with a 3-inch move, he should fit on the other side of the wall. I then could have even brought these guys with a 6-inch move up here, because none of them can get into base contact with this guy, right? I could have done something like this, but I could have purposely left a few of them within 3 inches of him. So maybe in this situation when I wanted to kill both, bear in mind I think that probably I killed this knight with just 2 or 3 models, I could have now used my 3-inch activation to pull this guy here right round, pull this guy 3, possibly pull this guy 3, and maybe even, maybe not, maybe if I moved them, maybe if I moved him first to get over, potentially there would have been a situation where I could have got 1 more. So I think I could have had a couple more models fight this way. I could have still had 3 models fight that way. Maybe even 4 actually. Something like that. So rather than the situation I was in, by declaring both of them and then having a really poor roll, I ended up with maybe 6 guys fighting the Dread Knight and 3 guys fighting this. In this situation, I think I maybe have 5 now. I was touch and go whether or not, depending on if these walls were thinner. These walls aren't 100% thin because I don't have the terrain we play in. But if this was thinner, that guy was super close to getting in there. I could have potentially had 6 on the big knight. Bear in mind that big knight would have had a bigger base, so arguably it might have been able to be done. And even with a crap charge roll, I could have still fought that guy, I could have still killed that guy, and even then I could have probably consolidated just about every model of the squad. Maybe 1 or 2 guys, maybe Lamartez and 1 guy are not in cover. All other 8 models could have got over the wall, could have got into cover, and we would have done more damage to this knight, potentially bracketing it, which would have been a pretty big play.
The second tip today is engaging units that you did not charge and how you can use this to kill or put attacks into units that were far away that you did not charge.
Now I had another situation in a game recently where I was able to use similar tactics going onto an objective. Now going onto this objective, these Blade Guard are going to need a 5-inch charge to make it into the troopers. They're going to need almost pretty much a 9-inch charge to get into the Zinj, no they're not Zinj, Thousand Suns. So I'm going to roll my charge roll. It's a 6. So let's see what we can do with a 6. So a 6 will bring units, we'll bring 1 unit to here. Now this is the interesting point. Every model must end in base-to-base contact with possible. And you can abuse this, and I'm going to show you right now how you can abuse it. 6 is possibly a perfect roll for this experiment. So if I take this first guy, move him 6 forward and put him here. If I then move the next guy 6 inches forward, put him here, in base contact with possible, and you see how I've purposely left quite a big gap. There's nothing to say that I need to leave a small gap. And what this means that at this point, this model physically would not be able to fit in between that gap now in base contact. So what that means is this model can go wherever he wants. All I need to do is stay within coherency. So let's move this guy 6 inches this way. So he could fit in nicely right there. Now, he is within 3 inches of this unit now, but he's actually probably just over 3 inches from the other unit. Yeah, I would say he's like maybe 2.8 from him, 3 for him. So we have a really interesting thing now. When he piles in, he can pile into this unit, even though we only declared this as the charge target. And in this situation, Thousand Sun Rubric Marines are OC2, so even if my 6 Blade Guard killed all 6 of these troopers here, or all 5, sorry, I wouldn't be holding this objective with all 6 of them on there. The Thousand Suns would be. But in this situation now, with him being able to fight there, that makes things really interesting. This model could move 6 right up behind him, as long as we're keeping coherency. And remember, coherency with only 6 units is a 2-inch. So now we've got 2 models that can fight this unit. I mean, 2 Blade Guard will probably pick up 5 toughness 3 troopers, right? We put 1 more Blade Guard that way for prosperity, I guess. And then we can bring this 1 Blade Guard 6 inches forward to that. So now we get to the pile-in stage. Everything's still on coherency, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. So the only stipulation we have now is every model must end closer to the nearest enemy model. These 2 guys are already based, so they aren't going to be moving. This guy's closest model is this guy, so let's just move him 3 inches like that. Next model, he is closest to these, so he's kind of stumped. He would have to move 3 inch like that. But this guy, he has to move closer to the closest enemy model, which this guy's 3.5 away, this guy's 5 away. So we just need to move anywhere we're less than 3.5 away from this guy. Well, 3 inches dead forward, touching this guy, so now being able to fight into the Rubric Marines is 3 inches away. So I've met the stipulation about every model must move closest to the nearest enemy model. So here's a perfectly legal situation with a crap charge roll against the closest unit. I mean, if I'd rolled a 5, I might have even failed that charge. But with this crap charge roll of a 6, I've legally now got, if he would base contact him, I legally have 4 guys that can fight this way. And I have 2 guys that can fight into Rubric Marines. So it's still going to be 10 attacks from Blood Angels. It's strength 7, -2, 2 damage. That probably kills a couple of Rubric Marines. Probably makes this my objective. If I rolled a 7, or an 8, or a 9, what could I have done? So we've moved them back, and let's just say, for argument's sake, I did roll a 9. Really good roll here. Can this one guy get round here and touch a model? Yes, so he doesn't really have a choice. He has to come round here and touch this. Now, these 3 guys would be interesting, because he has to move and end closest to the nearest model. So this guy will march forward 6, and he will go and tag this guy here. And the reason that we do that is because now no other model in this unit can get within engagement range. So these 2 guys are totally free. So if you take this guy with his 9, I could have actually done this with a 7. A 7 would put him right here, 1 inch away from this model, ready to pile in and fight it. You can't end with an engagement range of another unit, but that's not a problem. We kind of want to be 1 inch away so we can pile in. We take this other guy, put him right behind. So if we roll the better charge, so even if you roll the crap charge, you can still fight the model you maybe wanted to. I needed to kill both units here. I'm going to want to fight both of them. So even with the rubbish roll of a 6, because we only declared 1, I can still fight both. With a better roll of a 9, I could then pile in this way, make sure that he's touching him, and he's touching him. This guy could basically just touch him, end closer to the nearest model. If it was that one, it's probably that one in that case. But now with a good roll, I actually have half the squad of Blade Guard fighting the Thousand Suns, the other half the squad of Blade Guard fighting the troopers, and in this situation probably what's going to happen is all the troopers die, most of the Thousand Suns die. I consolidate on. This is now my objective. Beautiful, right?
Today's third tip is killing units inside transports that you weren't able to charge in the charge phase.
So transports used to be a big problem as well. We used to have Drukhari having loads of models inside them. You kill the transport, the models jump out, you can't do any damage to them, and then they'll kill you in their turn. Incubi were very good at doing this. This is a situation I want to show you with Blade Guard and a squad of Death Company, both wanting to charge the transport, and inside that transport, let's just say for example, we do have 5, let's call these Incubi. They are Rebel Alliance troopers, but let's forget about that. So the Blade Guard make their charge. What do we roll? It's a 9. So every model must end with an engagement range if possible. Now, It might have been even better in this situation for me to have a lower number. Let's just say it was a lower number, because you can do this either way, right? If it's a 9, there's nothing that says this guy has to move 9. We just need to get into base contact. So what we really want to do is surround the transport and leave a gap somewhere, either this side or the back. So when the Death Company charge here, there'll be space for basically the unit to come out and then the other unit to fight them, because there's no stipulation saying that a unit cannot fight a unit that's charged. The unit can fight a unit it didn't charge as long as the pile-in will get it into 3 inches. So we roll a 9. Let's move this one guy 7 and touch this here. Let's move this guy here. Let's move this guy. Let's use him and go round to about here. He goes here. He goes here. He goes here. So if this transport explodes, the models will need to come out here, correct? Because if they come out 3 inches away here, we could possibly place these a little bit more spread out, something like this, so that within 3 inches there would be no way for him to deploy the 5-man squad without ending in engagement range, right? All these models need to be in base contact if they can get to base contact. Now the Death Company want to charge. So they do their charge, and it's a 6. So we'll take this one guy. What might actually be best idea here is to take someone like this and put him, because if we can end with engagement, so you have to be very clever here. So what we want to do is take the guy that can move the furthest, for example, like this guy can move furthest, and put him in a situation where he's going to block other units from getting into engagement range, right? By putting him there, this guy can no longer physically get round him into engagement range. So that means he does not need to move into an engagement range anymore. In fact, we could actually take like this guy here and put him there. So now, none of the other models, potentially this guy could. So maybe what we would need to do is move him here. So you need to be very smart to a point where like he can't get there. You do fly when you're charging. So that would probably be okay actually. We put him there, and then none of these other guys could get in. So there is a gap now here within 3 inches. If you imagine 3 inches from the transport is here, we imagine that. Can the 5-man squad fit there within 3 inches of the transport and not within engagement range of any of those models? Yes. Yes, give or take, right? No one's going to argue that if you're like 1.1 inch or almost, I think 100% the squad can fit there. So none of these guys with their 6 inches can get into base contact. So what that means is the Death Company come in like this. So now the Blade Guard attack the transport. All their attacks. 30 attacks, strength 7. Let's just assume that they can kill that transport. You could do this actually either way. Because once the transport explodes and they have to place the squad within 3 inches of the transport, they have to roll their mortal wounds, etc, etc. They have to place the whole squad first before they roll their mortal wounds, right? We have to check that they're not within 1 inch of any model. This exact same tactic will work on bigger vehicles. It might even work better on bigger vehicles. But in this situation now, assuming the transport is destroyed by those Blade Guard, I can now activate my Death Company, and although they did not charge the guys inside, bear in mind those guys would be battle shot for whatever it's worth coming out of destroyed transport, I'm basically going to be able to go pile in, let's have him touch his base, him touch his base, him touch his base. In fact, he will touch his base. So out of that 7 Death Company, I think I messed up. I think I meant to do it Lamartis plus 5. 7 made it harder for myself to make the transport fight. 6 of the 7 Death Company, in fact, if he hadn't been there, it doesn't change much. All 6 Death Company in that situation would be able to fight against that unit that have come out the destroyed transport. That is very handy to know. Sometimes, in previous editions, what might happen is when you're trying to do this, and you're trying to destroy a transport, Drukhari models are tiny, they're on tiny little 25mm bases. Sometimes what will happen is they'll be able to even like squeeze a squad in like that, obnoxiously 1 inch away from you. And remember, all their transports have those little winged bits that stick out. They can measure from those, same as like I can measure from this ramp here. So potentially, like, those three, yeah, like, here's a good example, like, from this little ramp here, I could almost get the whole squad in like that. And that would be totally valid. They're all within 3. Yeah, that's from the little ram there. So that's what I'm, so when you're placing these guys in base-to-base contact, make sure they're spread out and try and use them to ensure that you're basically setting up one spot that you know that if you kill that transport, their models will have to come out there, your second unit will kill them. It's difficult with Eldari and Drukhari transports with all the little bits sticking out of them, but practice makes perfect. I'm sure there's enough times I've missed models and they've piled 5 guys out like this, 1 inch away from me, really annoyingly. Now I've got nothing that can fight them. Maybe this is 5 incubi, they're going to do a bunch of damage to me in his turn. That'll happen, but this is another key tactic you need to be aware of in 10th edition on how you can use a second squad to finish off the soft, squishy insides of a transport.
Before we go to tip 4, if you are getting some value out of this video, please do consider liking, subscribing, and pressing the bell and turn on your notifications. That way, whenever I go live or I post a new video, you will not miss out. Right, tip number 4 is preventing a deadly enemy unit that has to fight first actually being able to fight first.
So I've been playing a lot with my Blade Guard and the Judiciar and Fight First, and I think it's really strong, and I've been coming up against either Berserkers with like a Master of Execution and Khorne, giving them Fight First, or the 10-man Death Guard with a Foul Blight Spawn, giving them 10 Fight First, and those units are very almost unchargeable. So if you imagine for this situation, this is 10 Death Guard plus a Foul Blight Spawn. So if I charge these with my Blade Guard or my Dreadnought, I am probably very dead. However, imagine Darth Vader here is Typhus. He's chilling. He doesn't really come down with the squad. He comes down and does his mortal wound stuff. He's within about 3 inches of the unit of Death Guard. What I want to do in this situation actually is I want to charge both units into Typhus. So let's go for it. So the Dreadnought makes its charge. Key to this is ending within 3 inches of the Plague Marines, and the Blade Guard make their charge of a 6. Again, the key thing is to end, maybe this is even 6 Blade Guard. So maybe like this is my whole squad of Blade Guard that I normally would not charge. I wouldn't even go into fight with those Death Guard because they're so brutal, getting like lethal hits on 5s and 6s and having flamers and all this sort of stuff. They're horrific to deal with, right? So in this case, what we would want to start at the combat phase, we'd want to use Tank Shock. We'd want to Tank Shock Typhus and kill him, assuming that we've gotten low enough that we can kill this model. So we use our CP, we Tank Shock him. Now, the Death Guard player can choose a unit to fight first. Well, unfortunately for him, the Plague Marines aren't in engagement range with anyone, so they are unable to fight first. And I did not realise this, but Fight First is a specific extra part of the fight phase. Everybody who has Fight First makes their attacks first, then everybody that does remaining combats makes their attacks after. So, because this unit does not have anyone with an engagement range, then they have nothing to fight first. Now, my Dreadnought with his Strength 12 Fist, flat 3 damage, -3, can pile into the Plague Marines. He will kill a boatload of Plague Marines, hopefully. But the real trick to this movement from here would be to get as many of these guys into engagement range as possible. And in fact, I can probably do something like this. Meaning that what this ends up meaning is that a bunch of these models, when they do their pile-in, will still not be within engagement range of the Blade Guard, as they have to move closer to that Dreadnought. What that means is when my Blade Guard eventually do get a fight, I mean your opponent probably wants to pull these dead models away, but even if he did pull these 2 away, there's arguably a situation where I can still make a 3-inch move with this Blade Guard and touch in here. This guy can touch his base, this guy can touch his base, maybe this guy is stuck. But what basically that means is the Dreadnought got to fight first before the Plague Marines. Most of the Blade Guard, or half the Blade Guard, get to fight the Plague Marines as well, depending on where he pulls models from. Again, before the Plague Marines get to fight. So basically, we have managed to counter his fight first. There's actually an excellent example of this done by the guys over at Vanguard Tactics, and I hadn't even considered there was a possibility to counter fight first with a smart pile-in like this, but you can definitely use it, so big shout out them for making a video showing me how to do this. And for units that normally I just feel like you cannot deal with as Blood Angels, this gives you a potential way to deal with them. While we did use Tank Shock here, there's many other ways you could do that. You could quite happily have the Dreadnought kill that guy in close combat, and then when the Blade Guard pile in, now they would be free to all pile in into the Plague Marines. They'd all be able to fight before the Plague Marines fight, regardless of the fact that they have fight first, because you have activated the unit, so you are getting to fight before they get to fight. And I do think statistically, if you take 6 Blade Guard, hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s, strength 7 on the charge now, lethal hits and Red Rampage to give +1 to wound, so you'd be wounding on 2s, you're going to kill most of that 10-man unit of Blade Guard, and maybe even all of it. So that's a way you can actually have all 6 Blade Guard, plus the Judiciar, I guess, be able to fight into the Death Guard fight first unit, and they cannot fight back. That's huge. That's a great thing to know about. All you need is basically him to have some sort of other target close enough to them so you can use this against them.
Tip number 5 is let's prevent an enemy character from directing its attacks into your squad and or your character. This is a great tip to use with the Sanguinor.
And then finally, I'm going to show you a really nifty thing to do if the opponent has some big nasty character that you are going to need to deal with. And in this situation, I guess we have Darth Vader here again. We can imagine he's Typhus or some other sort of nasty chaos character. He's attached to a bunch of Death Shroud Terminators, let's say. So these guys are going to do a ton of damage to whoever they attack, and Typhus himself is probably going to kill a bunch of my expensive Blade Guard that I really want to survive and push on in this game. So here's the interesting thing. What we would do is we make a charge with this little squad of Death Company that's only just alive. There's 2 guys left. We make an 8-inch charge. What we want to do is we want to base the character. And there's a dead certain reason for that. By basing him, he will never now be able to move this way and touch one of his own models. What this means, potentially, is that when these Blade Guard come in to fight now, they'll be able to fight against the squad, but the character will never be able to fight the Blade Guard. So let's imagine I've got my Judiciar with these Blade Guard. We know the Judiciar is super important. We don't want him to be precisioned out by Typhus, so another unit could then come in and kill the Blade Guard. So now when we roll our Blade Guard charge, we can potentially put them somewhere like this, in a situation where we've based everybody in both squads now, so none of his characters can move because they're all touching the closest model. His character can now only kill these 2 Death Company. I mean, they were going to die in this situation anyway, so yes, sure, he kills them if for some reason they had fight first. But regardless, now my Blade Guard are free. All their attacks can go into the unit, and any character that was attached to these Blade Guard would be safe from any retribution from this character, even potentially like, again, a Khorne character with Master of Precision or something like that, Master of Execution, sorry, who is going to be very good at killing some of our important characters. This could be more prevalent if you had like a unit of jump assault marines led by a chaplain or something that is not very survivable, or even the Sanguinary Priest. Sanguinary Priest is a great example. He's not a survivable character, but he brings a lot to the unit. Of course, if they had a deadly character, they'd want to precision him out. So you use another weak squad to lock that character up in a position where he can now not use his attacks, because he would not be eligible to move, because he is already based, and he wouldn't be able to be eligible to make attacks. So a unit can only fight with a model that's in engagement range, which would be these guys, or a model can fight if it's in base-to-base contact with another model from its own unit that is in base-to-base contact with the enemy. Regardless of all these guys being in base-to-base contact with the Blade Guard, the character is not. So he's unable to attack the Blade Guard, he would be unable to use precision to hit any character that is attached to the Blade Guard, hence you keep your important to survive characters alive.
And bonus tip today is let's talk about aggressive onslaught with our all-time favourite Death Company dreadnought with frenzied reprisal, and how we can use this to get maximum damage into multiple enemy units.
Now, one of the things I want to talk about is the Death Company dreadnought. Now, the Death Company dreadnought has some very interesting rules in that basically whenever he is attacked, he will be able to attack again. So, and that's cast as an out-of-phase combat. So in this situation, where potentially the enemy's lined up their unit like this to make it very difficult for me to charge and take this objective away from them, there's two things you could do here, right? Number one is we could tank shock into this unit. That would do a bunch of mortal wounds, maybe kill out two of the guys. We would then be pretty confident that the Death Company dreadnought could finish that squad off. However, if he finishes a squad off, then that's a problem, right? Because he moves in, he tank shocks, we kill the whole unit. What do we need to do? Well, now we can play Frenzied Arrival to get a 6-inch consolidate move. That would be ideal. That will move us right within range of these troop units on the backfield. And this is why I like to have double heavy flavor on my Death Company dreadnought. Now, the second these guys attack the Death Company dreadnought, they're not going to do a whole lot of damage against it. I get 2d6 flame shots potentially for 4, which I could use on this unit if there was a reason to kill it. But there's nothing to say that I needed to do that. I could also use my heavy flamers to shoot out of combat at another unit. These guys might not even be on an objective. I might have charged something just off the objective, and now I'm going to flame a unit on an objective to get some additional damage done in there. And likewise, if I didn't think that I was going to be able to kill all these guys, I could be quite happy to kill 3 of them, let this guy hit me back, and then flame that unit, knowing confidently that I will potentially kill this unit in another round of combat. The Death Company dreadnought has 0 OC, so the trick with him is to have chaplains in your list within 12 inches, but if not, he can still do an awful lot of damage. Bear in mind, he can potentially fight or shoot again as soon as he's attacked, and if he pays 1 CP for aggressive onslaught, which gives him a 6-inch consolidation, after he's killed one unit and consolidated into another unit and potentially shot or killed it again, he still has that 6-inch consolidation for the rest of this phase. So you pay for the stratagem once, you may be able to use your consolidate move multiple times. These things are what I like to call wrecking balls, and I'll be using one in my battle report this week, so make sure to come and check it out. Bear in mind, the Death Company dreadnought is our only unit that's going to get a 7-inch charge from Deep Strike against monsters and vehicle because of the Magna grapple. So I highly recommend putting these guys in reserve. We actually fit 3 of these guys under the 500 point reserve limit. They are deadly, and I will be trying them out a bit more in my list, and somebody was running 2 of these in a tournament winning Blood Angels list. Able to fight multiple times, able to shoot multiple times, able to shoot every time it's shot at. So if your enemy has chaff units like this with las cannons, they almost just can't shoot it, because the second they shoot it, they're going to get lit up with double heavy flamer.
Thank you so much for getting to the end of the video. If you'd like to see more content from me, then do one of the YouTube algorithm things like, subscribe, or leave a comment. If you'd like to support me and you enjoy the content that I bring, then either over on Patreon or by clicking the big join button under this video for literally the price of a cup of coffee every month, you can help me grow the Blood Angels Commander channel. Thank you ever so much to everyone that does that, and thank you to you if you just watched the video and hung out. I will catch you in the next video. By the blood are we made strong, my brothers. Peace.